Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you again. Today, we are going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 33 together, and I am super excited to bring you this episode. Um, as always, we like to start off by thanking everybody who supports the channel. Thank you for all the subscribers. Thank you folks who are watching. If this is your first time jumping onto the channel and seeing this video, please go ahead and take a look at the playlist that we have here that covers all of the Amazing Spider-Man issues that we've looked at so far. And the series goes all the way back to Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. The videos do come out every Monday at 8 a.m. And so if you do have the opportunity, please subscribe and hit the notification button, and then you'll be notified when each new video arrives. There are also a lot of other videos here on my channel that have to do with creating comics, art, things of that nature. So if you are interested in that as well, please, again, thank you for subscribing. And if you're not subscribed now, please consider doing it. Amazing Spider-Man 33 is the ongoing story that has been going on for the past several issues, probably 3 issues of Spider-Man. And so again, if you're just joining, you may want to go back and at least watch the previous episode that we just did this week on issue number 32, because it ends in a cliffhanger and starts directly off in the story here with issue number 33. So that all being said, again, I think this is going to be a great issue. I'm very excited to share it with you. Let's get over to the comic and let's take a look together right now. Okay, so here we have the cover for the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 33. And this is terrific. I love this cover. The notes that I take with every issue, so in every episode I go through the comic first, I take notes. And for the cover, the first word that I wrote was incredible. Then I wrote, let the image speak for itself. So what we've seen over the past several issues, throughout actually the first couple of years here of Spider-Man comics, is that the covers tend to involve a lot of copy. So a lot of lettering, a lot of explanation, a lot of talk about what's happening. And here it's just called the final chapter. You have Spidey trapped, the water's pouring down everywhere, and it looks like it's it for our hero. So again, if your cover is meant to get someone to go, I have to see what's going to happen, this is exactly the kind of thing you want. This is a cover that's going to make someone pick up this comic and have to find out what's happening. Let me explain as well. I do in every video, but if you're new, the comic that we're looking at here is a scanned PDF copy of the original comic. So back in 2004, Marvel got a hold of all of the original issues of The Amazing Spider-Man up to that time, and they physically scanned each and every one, and then put them onto at the time, CD, not even DVD, but CD-ROM drive, or CD-ROM discs that you could purchase and then read digitally at your leisure. And that's what this is. So the scans of the covers tend to be a little dark for some reason. So you may see, if you look this up, certainly if you see it in a reprint, it's going to be a lot brighter in terms of the color. But again, the color pops. The red Spidey behind this light blue really emphasizes the danger that he is in, and it's just awesome. So again, this is an incredible cover, and I think probably one of the all-time best Spider-Man covers that you've ever seen. So we jump right in, and as I mentioned, this is a PDF copy of the original, so you're going to see things like these original old ads. You'll see some yellowing to the book, maybe, rips or tears here or there, and that's just the nature of it. I like it in that it shows us how that ink was, originally looked on the newsprint paper, as opposed to some of the more modern recolor reprints that we see. I like this old original stuff, and we're looking at it as it was off the newsstand at the time of publication. So we have our splash page, and it's not technically a splash because it's made up of lots of panels here, but it reads as, we still call it a splash page when you kind of open that title and you have that one big page. And here's a recap for you of what was going on. So I'm highly recommending go back and watch the last episode to get you caught up. If you don't have time, we'll give you a real quick here. Aunt May is ill. There's some form of radiation in her blood that is killing her. And of course, Peter believes it's from his own blood when he had to give her a blood transfusion a number of issues ago. Kirk Connors, formerly the Lizard, but an excellent scientist, is helping Spidey to create a serum or a solution, a cure for Aunt May. In the meantime, there have been a lot of robberies by this guy called the Master Planner, who turns out to be Dr. Octopus, who has an underwater base and is stealing atomic and radioactive material and equipment. Of course, also stealing something that Spidey needs for this cure for Aunt May. So that leads him into conflict with Doc Ock and his men. And now Spidey is trapped under this massive machinery underground, under the water in the underwater base, which has been cracked and is now leaking and flooding slowly. And at the end of the previous issue, he kind of said he was tired, he's worn out, he's been fighting, and he can't lift this giant machine, and now he's stuck. There's the cure, it's out of reach, and he could never get it to Aunt May. So he was at a very low point there in the previous issue, and now we jump right into the action. So Spidey is, struggling and looking for, his motivation, his inner strength. He's got to reach down into that core. I said, these are all through these next several pages, great sense of strain. You feel how heavy this machine is above him, how small the amount of space he has underneath it is. I like the more zoomed in panels here doing that. You see the water, and as the panels go, more and more water is flowing down on top of Spidey's head. I think that is great as well. So overall, really, really good. Of course, as he's thinking about Aunt May, he's also thinking about Uncle Ben and, how his actions have kind of led to some of these issues. And then we have this nice zoom out again to see how big this machine is. He's not lifting something that's, the size of him. This thing is massive and huge. And then we start zooming in and zooming in and zooming in. And again, you feel the strain. Steve Ditko, the artist, has done an amazing job of putting Spidey in a position where, even though you can only see little parts of him, you see his arms, his head, you see how far back it's twisted and pulled. Like here's a great example. And they use these little lines, these little shake lines. So if you've ever had to lift something heavy and your muscles are tired, sometimes it'll shake. And that's what we're seeing here is Spidey shaking. He's struggling so hard, but you feel the weight, you feel the pressure, and you feel the strain through this imagery, which is everything you could ask for. It's unbelievable. So Spidey is starting to get a little bit of movement. So this beam right here that was right in front of him was driven into the floor and buried. And you see he's made enough progress that's now coming out of the ground. So that's a really nice visual scene, a visual cue that he's making some progress. We see the big machinery behind that's trapped him has actually moved up out of the way. So that's really nice there. I like this whole sequence. Again, it's visceral. You feel it. It's very, very moving art. We cut to the ceiling, and we can see that's where the water's coming from, and it's getting bigger. The water pressure is pushing in. More and more water is spilling on Spidey as he goes. So again, you just have this really good pacing. danger and the risk is ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. And is he going to be able to make it? So he gets to this point here, and I hope this was deliberate and not just an accident. But what we've got here is this pause. And this is perfect storytelling. And now we have an ad break. So you have that cliffhanger moment of he's made some progress and he's holding it. And he says he's just got to go just a little bit more, but he doesn't know if he can do it. And the water's coming down hard. We don't know. Is he going to make it? If I turn this page, is it going to come crashing down on him? At this moment of time, anything is possible. And that's a great, great storytelling moment. You know, in some of these past issues, you'll see if you go through the old episodes, there are times when I would have preferred a page turn reveal. So that's what this is all called, is a page turn reveal. And basically the idea is don't show your big surprise moment on the page where two pages are facing each other and open, because as I'm reading here, I can see what's going to happen. So it takes away some of that drama. There's no big, you turn. And so here we have a page turn where what's going to happen next is going to dictate the whole story. And we as readers don't know what's going to happen. So terrific pause there. Again, I hope that was the plan as they put together these pages. It was like, please put the advertisement right here. I hope it was deliberate. Boom, we turn the page and I just wrote iconic with a whole bunch of exclamation points. In my opinion, this is one of the top 3 iconic Spidey images in the history of the character. And this character is 60 plus years old. And here we have something that when you look at Spider-Man and what does he mean as a character? Overcoming odds, overcoming the obstacles in his way, seeming to achieve more than he possibly could by not giving up. Yes, Spider-Man is super strong, but even that has its limits. And maybe this thing was heavier than he should have been able to lift, but he did it anyway. And that's something that I think really, again, highlights the character. It highlights, I know, Steve Ditko's philosophy of storytelling, that heroes should be bigger than life. They should be able to overcome more than than is expected of them on paper. That's what makes them heroes. And knowing the circumstances, that if he doesn't do this, not only is he going to die, but his aunt who raised him, that took him in, that cares about him probably more than anybody in the world, would also die. And here you have Spidey doing it. So from a storytelling perspective, this image speaks so much to what Spider-Man is to so many fans like myself. Then you also have just the visual aspect. A lot of times Spidey is drawn as a muscular figure, but not the biggest, bulkiest figure in the Marvel universe. He's still a teenager or young adult. And that's just not his body type. He's not buff like the Hulk. He's not ripped like Thor. But the muscles here, I think Steve deliberately went above and beyond in rendering out all the muscles. Because in essence, Spidey is straining every muscle in his body. And you see it and you feel it. So again, when you look at, some other images, yes, we don't see a ton here. He has muscles. There's a bicep muscle, there's your forearm muscles, shoulders. But this is probably, to date, the most pumped up Spider-Man that we've seen so far. And it makes sense. It's drama everywhere. The water coming, the flow. So as he's throwing the machine back, you have all these water drops and splashes flowing in that direction, which is terrific. I did note that as well, that I thought like it's an interesting technique. I'm assuming that these little dots are probably some form of white paint or whiteout. The other way that a lot of artists would do sort of this scratchy, sort of white highlights on things was you would ink it all in, in solid black ink, and then you can come in with a razor blade and you can sort of shave away almost that top layer of paper, and it will, if you do it right with a light hand, it will show this sort of scratchy line of white underneath. So that's possible how it was done, but the fact that it's a lot of little circles that are pretty similar in size and space makes me think it's probably whiteout or white paint. Either way, it's a great technique. It's not something we see a ton in these older comics. And then, so I really like it. It adds a lot in terms of just the motion and it just gives your eye more to look at on what's already an awesome page. So phenomenal stuff. Great, iconic page. Thank you, Steve Ditko, for this page and for this, for being a splash page, for being this iconic moment. So here we go. Spidey is out. He's injured and the base is flooding. And I thought this was really good. I liked there's this alternating Spidey roof, Spidey roof, Spidey roof, Spidey. And I mentioned to me that back and forth between him trying to escape and watching the roof crack, get bigger and bigger, more water coming through. I likened it to the pacing of a ticking time bomb, which I think was very cool because that's exactly what's happening, right? Is Spidey only has moments. He's injured. How's he going to escape? He's kind of not, only in that the roof is going to let go before he can get out of there. So now plan B. But I like this pacing, and again, the back and forth between the views really creates that, like I said, ticking time bomb type of sense. And then here on the next page, this water's awesome. A lot of times we think of water as very soft, rolling kind of edges, but really when you look at water can have some very hard shaped edges, at least. When you look at waves on the ocean, there are some hard lines there. It's not all soft and bubbly. And this is cascading, torrenting water going through a building, so lots of shapes and stuff. So I thought this really emphasized the violence of it, and it helps to, again, emphasize the danger that Spidey's in. If you had nice, soft, rolling waves, it doesn't seem so bad. This seems frightening. And then great addition of all of the debris and stuff. Again, it would be very easy for us to focus as an artist, a storyteller, on Spidey just being under the water and trying to escape. But I thought it was really good to include all of this wreckage, which is what led to the collapse of the base in the first place. So I thought that was very, very nice. I've mentioned this before in a couple other episodes where Spidey's been underwater. I do always like the blue coloring. This is at a time, obviously, this comic was printed at a time when we didn't have the same technology we do today with computer coloring, where every color is available to you and printers can reproduce it exactly as it is on your screen. Back in the day, colors had to be mixed by printing multiple passes over the paper and mixing the dots in a certain way to get that color. So, for example, here, if you see if we can zoom in enough to see it. When you zoom in on this top part, which is this orangish color, it's really alternating dots of yellow and a tone of red. And depending on how many yellow dots there are compared to red dots, tells you if it's more of a yellow tone of orange or a red tone of orange. And so that's how you would get your colors. So to color everything in blue tones, in like 3 different kind of blue tones. So you have the background water, the mid-ground kind of characters are a little bit lighter blue, and then your close-up characters are a darker blue. That's really nice. It's something that isn't easy to do with this era of coloring, but they did a really good job. And of course, you have things like when Spidey's fingers break the surface or his foot breaks the surface, it's in that red. So I really like that. I think it's a neat application of color and something that unfortunately we kind of miss in today's computer coloring. It's simplified storytelling, but still effective. So now the bad guys are here and they're going to try to stop him, and Spidey has to fight his way through. And from a story perspective, it's kind of interesting. He's basically letting them beat him up for a little while because he feels like they can't hurt him, or they can't hurt him too bad to start with. And then, as he's sort of recovering his strength as they're beating him up, he then, begins to fight back. So, there's a part of me, again, that always wonders. So, knowing how these comics were put together, I always kind of question, was this the original meaning behind it? So, the way that this comic was put together is called the Marvel method. I've described it several times in past episodes, but if you haven't heard it, let me give you a brief breakdown. So the way it works is the artist and writer typically work together. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They work together to come up with a basic story concept that is called the plot. And the plot is as simple as Spider-Man's trapped. He has to get out. He has to fight his way through the henchmen, get to the hospital, save Aunt May. I mean, it can be as simple as that. Obviously, the more detail you put into the plot, the easier it is to write off of that. Then the artist takes the plot and says, okay, let me break this down. So I've got 20-something pages, depending on your era of comics. I've got 20-something pages to work with, and here's how I'm going to break it down. So in the first 7 pages, here's what happens. Here's the next 7 pages are typically your build up, and then your last 7 pages are your conclusion, probably your big fight scenes and stuff like that. That's kind of right. So then the artist draws that based on the plot idea and the breakdown. Then the art, the uncolored black and white art, goes to the writer, who then scripts the dialogue and says, okay, based on this panel, what would Spider-Man be saying? What would he be thinking? And this comes back to, I always start to wonder about stuff. Like, so Spidey jumps in and starts fighting and quickly starts getting beat up. Now, for him to say that he's going to not fight back, he can rest and recover his energy, but he can only go for so long. And now he's got to start fighting back. But even when he starts even though he rested, and now that he starts fighting back, he's not winning, right? He rested, but there's still, the number game is against him, and he's starting to get dizzy, and he's starting to black out, and he just has to fight on instinct, and he's just swinging wild. It makes me wonder if this whole dialogue about him resting by getting beat up was not what it was, the visuals intended it. Did the visuals here intend for Spidey to jump in thinking, I got to take these guys out, quickly being overwhelmed, and then over here now starting to be like, hey, I got to stop these guys. I can't give up. They have the numbers. I'm injured. I'm tired, but I've got to keep fighting. The whole thing about resting while getting beaten up and then still being beaten up, I don't know. It makes me question the story. Anyway, the pacing is very good. Again, we talk about that. Very nice stuff. Good camera moves. So your camera is your eyes of your reader, and you can't move them throughout the space. So we move the space. And so we have different angles And the reason that makes it so effective by changing the angle on every panel is it feels like Spidey's being just hit from all directions all at once, which is what's happening. But we want the reader to feel that sense as well. So you move from this side to this side, up, down, over, in, out, and it creates that sense of he can't focus. He's just coming from all angles and getting beat up. So I like that a lot. I think that's a really nice use of the camera movement. Did want to point out here a coloring error. So this piece right here was colored the same color as Spidey's leg. This is in fact the other fist of whoever owns this fist here, this purple fist. Now, why would that happen, right? Why wouldn't the colorist know this is a purple fist? Well, so what happens, and there's a couple examples here of this, and I'll point them out. They're called tangents. And tangents are when two separate lines from two separate objects line up against each other perfectly. And now it becomes very difficult to differentiate which one's in front and which one's in back because there's no overlapping to tell you. And that's what I think part of what might have happened here. You have the leg coming down of Spidey. There's nothing that overlaps the outside edge to really show you that this is a fist that is overlapping Spidey's body. The way like this face does very well. And this big fist does. So when it's in something like that, and the colorist just sees this outline in this shape, and they don't, maybe miss it in the middle, that's kind of what happens. Just a quick note, I'll try to make sure I fix it in editing if we need to. There is some lawn mowing going on outside. So if you hear the noise, that's what's happening. My apologies. These crazy lawnmower guys. But we're going to power through. One more thing about the coloring as well. Simple background. So I like the yellow. The reason that I like the yellow coloring or orangish coloring throughout some of the background, this one, the white is fine. You have yellow on the floor and it kind of switches up, is because it is a different color from all of the characters. It's going to help pop the purple characters, the red and blue Spidey character. None of these characters have yellow in their costumes. And so therefore, it really helps them all stand out away from the background. Again, talking about the difference between simple coloring. So in the old days, again, you didn't have every color under the rainbow, and each page had multiple passes to put different layers of colored dots down to make the colors you need. So you couldn't go through and do all sorts of gradients and different tones and stuff the way we do today. And the nice part about this is, if this was today's modern coloring, somebody would have colored this background probably some sort of gray, steel, something, because it's supposed to be, this base, this villain base, maybe a brown, but that's really going to blend in with this sort of purplish gray on the characters here. So that's something that just really bugs me personally, is when I see modern comics and you have a character, let's say even like Spider-Man. So Spider-Man's red and blue, and they'll put him against a blue background, or they'll put him against a reddish background. And I go, separate them, put them against a green background. It's comics. You can make it anything you want. Who cares if the sky's green? Make it green. Make the wall green. It's a brick wall. Make it green. That's okay. It still will work as a neutral, but will pop out the character from the front. So just a pet peeve of mine when it comes to coloring. And maybe it's because I grew up with this old school coloring technique, but to me, sometimes, again, simpler works better. So here we go. Great. Spidey is just fighting on instinct, thrashing, and kind of stops for half a second and realizes that he has beaten everybody up and didn't even realize it. Now, this is an example of where I, again, would like to have seen this on the page turn. So what I mean is, you maybe take one or two of these panels away somewhere, bring these panels onto this page. That way, when you turn this page, this becomes maybe a little bit bigger and is the first thing you see. So that's your reveal, is that now he's been fighting. By having it on the same page, it takes away some of the drama of the reveal. So that's where an artist, you can use page turns to help boost up, the storytelling. It's something that is important to take into consideration, something I would have done a little different. So now we just move on. Nothing crazy here or super of note. Some solid storytelling, but it's kind of your normal stuff. I did like this angle of sort of looking up. So instead of usually, you have your movie or your TV show and the characters looking through the microscope, and they always kind of show them from the side and they're looking and they go, oh my gosh, look at this. And maybe they show a view through the microscope. But here we have one from the bottom of the microscope up into his face, Doc Connor's excited face that the serum that they've developed works. I've never seen that kind of angle before. I think it's really neat. And so just something I wanted to point out. I thought that was pretty cool. Spidey arrives. Funny little storytelling bit here. So, of course, as he was going through all this, he was on a clock, right? He needed to save Aunt May. He didn't have all kinds of time, so he didn't set up his camera. So now he goes back with his camera, and he takes pictures and sort of stages the scene so that it looks like the pictures were taken while he was capturing the bad guys. So I think that was pretty interesting. So, again, nothing crazy as far as the art on this page. We're going to move through and just the story. So everything is breaking that the criminals have been caught. Spidey's got it all together. He's bringing photos to sell to Jonah because he needs money. And he comes in contact with Betty. So that's part of the other sort of little sub-story that's been going on the last several issues, is that Peter is finally kind of breaking ties with his first real girlfriend, Betty Brant. So she's got a suitor named Ned Leeds who's interested, who wants to marry her. She, of course, has this sort of like PTSD reaction to her brother's death, which happened in an earlier issue. And so she's deathly afraid that if someone that she cared about was involved in dangerous activity, they could get hurt and she would have literally like a nervous breakdown. So I put here dramatic, maybe overly dramatic. Like the face, this is someone in pure unadulterated terror. Like this is seeing your worst nightmare come to life. And maybe maybe that's her worst nightmare, is Peter getting beat up. I don't know. I mean, he's okay. He's a little beat up, but he's going to be fine. But this abject terror is just crazy. And so it seems a little over dramatic for what's happening. Maybe here, the sort of, I'm running off. Why, why can't you just be, more peaceful and calm? But this, anyway, very interesting ink techniques here. I was trying to figure out if the white is part of the coloring or part of the ink, meaning did Steve Ditko go in and sort of white out some of the inks on these lines, or does it have to do with the coloring over the top? And I'm not 100% sure about either, because there's places where the white cuts over and shows the ink line underneath. Then there's parts where it looks like the white is taking out the ink, right? So I don't know. It's just a very interesting technique and an interesting effect for this sort of mind-blowing, like, psychosis that Betty is going through. So Peter goes in, sells his photos to Jonah, and I like this. This is a great little bit of cartooning, right? He shows the photos, which are great, and Jonah wants him, and Peter kind of snatches him back away from him so that he can negotiate some more money. So I think that's pretty funny. Nice, like I said, a nice little bit of cartooning. This could be in a, you know, in a Saturday morning or Sunday morning comic strip in the newspaper. So nice little bit there. Get to the hospital to check on Aunt May. Doc gives Pete a little look over. He's gonna be fine. He's just a little beat up. And then I did note this face, this close up of Aunt May, and again, I've talked about it. It's been a while. Drawing faces and Steve Ditko's ability to draw different faces for different people might be unmatched. Like I won't say names. I'm not going to name names, but I think we all know there are certain artists, very popular comic book artists, who basically draw the same face. The face is the same. It's the same size, the same shape. The eyes kind of the same size, and then you change the hair and you change the clothes. Same with the men's faces, and it's fine. It's just simpler that way. But what Steve does here is Peter doesn't look like this doctor, and the nurse doesn't look like Aunt May. And to draw an elderly person's face and really emphasize the age is amazing and much, much harder than you think it would be. We all, as artists, we all study the face structure. So, your proportions, where the eyes go, where the nose go, to be able to take those rules and then twist and adjust them is amazing. So you could see how her teeth are sort of sunken in. I don't know that she doesn't have teeth. She's always shown as having teeth and not dentures or something like that. But, it's sunken in. The line from the bottom of the nose to her top lip has become longer. The folds of the skin, the thinness of that chin, the wrinkles, all of it is incredible. Then when you combine, so one, it's hard to draw older people and get it right. It's hard to draw babies because the proportions are weird and, again, different from an adult person. Then to tip that head up, so straight on, again, a little bit easier to draw, but when you start tilting the angle, now you have to shorten up because of the foreshortening. You have to shorten up the distance between the nose and the eyes. How do you draw the transition from the top of the chin to under to the neck? All that stuff becomes much harder. And so what seems like kind of a throwaway panel of just Peter looking at a sleeping Aunt May, that's an incredible illustration and way, way harder than I guarantee you think that it is. She's seeming to pull through. She's smiling. She's holding his hand. Things seem to be pretty good. And then I thought this was kind of an interesting little thing. And again, talks to the Marvel method. So what I mean by this is Peter's walking away, limping away. The doctor is closing the shades on Peter. So there's some, what's the word I'm looking for? Symbolism, right? Maybe. And then, so what is that meaning? And the dialogue, he's talking about how nice Peter is, what a good nephew he is, and that he sure would be a great idol for kids to look up to as opposed to Spider-Man. So I have a lot to talk about with that. One, again, visually, we've got this closing of the blinds separating Peter from Aunt May. So what does that mean, right? Are we putting something into play? Are we hinting that there's going to be a separation there of some kind? We're drawing the shades on their story together. There's also great shading. So it's the same image, but as each panel, the shadows on Aunt May's face get darker and darker as the shade is pulled. That's really cool too. So what I wonder is the dialogue here, again, what was intended? And what I mean is this seems ominous. To me, it seems ominous. Pulling the shades separating them, having Aunt May in the dark doesn't seem as light as this idea of, haha, boy, what if Peter was a mentor or an idol for teenagers and not Spider-Man, when of course, right, they're one and the same. This seems dark. And so it makes me wonder, you could have had a nice plot thread here of this doctor who's no dummy, maybe speculating. How did this woman get radiation in her blood in the first place? Why was Spider-Man so anxious to help this random old lady? Why is her nephew all beat up? Right? Maybe this doctor's starting to put two and two together. That could have been a little plot thread that maybe turned into something, maybe didn't. So I think that could have been very interesting. So again, I have a lot of questions about this as we close out the issue of what was really meant back here. But kind of could have been something and sort of ended up getting thrown away. And I don't know if that's, like I said, is that the Marvel method or is that what was originally intended? So there we go. And we have the end of the issue. So as always, we're going to cut back to the desk and we're going to wrap things up there. So there we have Amazing Spider-Man number 33. As I think I said from the beginning, this is an iconic issue featuring one of, if not the most iconic imagery of Spider-Man. As you could tell probably from the way I talked about it, this issue is very meaningful for a lot of Spider-Man fans like myself. It really encapsulates, I think, everything you need to know. If you were trying to explain Spider-Man to somebody who had never heard of the character before, you might be able to kind of use this issue to help, kind of illustrate what makes Spider-Man one of modern storytelling's greatest heroes. So again, I can't say enough good things about it. There are some things where, I mentioned the coloring error. There was a couple of things where the dialogue and the imagery maybe didn't go together perfectly. Some tangent lines in terms of the drawing. So not perfect, but certainly, in my opinion, a 9 out of 10. Yes, you do kind of need, it has a nice recap. So if you didn't read the episode or issue before and you just got this one, you could figure out what's going on. Much better if you have all three in a row, so you can read the whole storyline, the whole plot line through together. But again, this issue on its own, 9 out of 10 for sure for me. Absolutely love it. And I hope you did too. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have an opportunity, think about subscribing to the channel. Definitely helps me out. And the more that we can get this out to people, the more that these videos can get into the YouTube algorithm and more people will see them in their feed. So please comment, like, and share if you can. That way we can get in touch with more people who can come on board and enjoy these Spider-Man retrospective videos. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next week with more Spidey. Thanks.